Have you ever felt the weight of someone's silence louder than any shouted words? That strange ache when a message is left unread, a gaze is averted, or a voice that once called your name now vanishes into absence. When a man ignores you, does something deeper than bruise your pride. It rattles your sense of worth, of connection, of clarity. But pause. Before you spiral into self, blame, or chase shadows, ask yourself, what is silence trying to teach me? Stay with this question, for the answer is not out there. It is waiting quietly inside you, and by the end of this journey, you will not only see what he may be thinking, you'll see what your soul has been whispering all along. When a man falls silent, when his voice no longer graces the air between you, the mind begins to wander into shadowed forests of doubt. It starts drawing conclusions from echoes, interpreting emptiness as meaning. We look into the space he leaves behind as if it were a mirror. Too often, what we see is a distorted reflection of our fears, not the truth of who we are, nor even the truth of what he feels. This is the first misunderstanding, to assume that silence means abandonment, rejection, or punishment. But silence is not always absence. It is a mirror, and in that mirror, two souls are reflected, his and yours. There is an old teaching from a mountain temple, hidden deep within the mists. A young student once approached his master, tears welling in his eyes. "My friend no longer speaks to me," he said. "Have I wronged him? Have I become unworthy?" The master, without answering, handed the student a clay bowl filled with clear water and asked him to carry it across the garden. "Walk slowly," he said, "and do not spill a single drop." The student obeyed, walking carefully across stones and roots, focused entirely on the bowl. When he returned, the master asked, "While you walked, did you think of your friend?" "No," the student replied, "I was too focused on the water." The master nodded. "Your friend may be carrying something fragile. His silence may not be about you. Do not disturb his burden with your assumptions. This parable is not about self-neglect, but self-awareness. When someone retreats into silence, it is natural to feel pulled toward questions. Did I say too much? Not enough? Should I reach out again? But what if their silence has little to do with your worth and everything to do with their own noise? The noise of past wounds, confusion, or emotional fatigue. In nature, winter comes not to reject the trees, but to prepare them for spring. Tree does not question its value because the birds stop singing in its branches. It does not shed its leaves in shame. It stands in stillness, knowing the cycle is not punishment, it is process. Many men, when overwhelmed or uncertain, turn to silence not as an act of cruelty, but as a refuge. They withdraw into themselves, not knowing how to express the weight they carry. But because they do not speak, you begin to fill the silence with your own insecurities. In that moment, the mirror shows not his truth, but your internal reflection. It is said in the Tao Te Ching Chua, "The sage does not speak. The one who speaks is not the sage. True wisdom flows where words are few. Let his silence be what it is. Let it reflect, but do not let it define you. Instead, use it as an invitation to deepen your own awareness. Ask, what does this quiet awaken in me? Where am I grasping? Where am I forgetting my own ground? In real life, we often find ourselves waiting for a reply, a call, an acknowledgement. A woman sits with her phone beside her for hours, refreshing a screen, measuring her value by an unread message. But imagine this. Instead of waiting, she closes her eyes and breathes deeply. She lights a candle, not for someone else to see, for herself, to remind her of her own inner flame. In that moment, the silence becomes sacred. It transforms from neglect into a mirror of power. The silence of others, especially from someone we care for, can be painful, but it is not always a wound. Sometimes it is an initiation. a call to remember that you are not made whole by someone else's attention. You are made whole by your own presence. And so, the mirror of silence becomes a doorway. Walk through it not in fear, but in stillness. Let us now follow the path further, where silence is no longer a mirror, but a currency. One that some spend freely, while others hoard like treasure they believe grants them power. When a man ignores you, it is not always an accident of emotion. Sometimes it is a choice. Not all silence is confusion. Some silence is strategy. Attention in this world is a currency, and there are those who withhold it not because they are uncertain, but because they believe it makes them richer in control. Imagine two monks sitting across from one another. One offers tea to his guest, pouring with a steady hand and open heart. The other holds his cup tightly, refusing to pour. He believes that to pour first is to surrender, to lose the upper hand. What he fails to see is this: the one who shares is not weaker. The one who holds back is not stronger. True strength lies not in who pours last, but in who pours with intention and clarity. In relationships, whether new or long-standing, the dance of attention often becomes a game of who chases and who retreats. A man may grow quiet not because he feels deeply, but because he wants to see how much power his silence holds over you. This is not always malicious. It may be subconscious, learned behavior from a world that teaches men to protect vulnerability by withdrawing. But here lies your choice. Will you spend your days decoding the silence, trying to buy back his attention with more effort, more words, more presence? Or will you realize that you do not need to purchase what should be freely given? There is a truth in the way the sun shines. It does not dim its light to test the earth's longing. It rises full and steady regardless of who looks. Likewise, your attention, your affection, your presence, these are sacred. If they are treated as bargaining chips, the entire exchange becomes hollow. A real-life reflection: consider the woman who, tired of being ignored, stops initiating, not out of bitterness, because she finally understands that love is not meant to be chased. It is meant to be met. Days pass. The man notices. He reaches out. By then, her silence is no longer reactive. It is peaceful. She has reclaimed her energy, not as punishment, but as self-respect. The philosopher Epictetus once wrote to, "If someone does not value your presence, make them value your absence." But this is not about retaliation. It is about redirection. Withholding your presence is not an act of war. It is an act of alignment. You are choosing not to spend your emotional currency on someone who does not honor it. And in that, there is deep wisdom. Like the ocean, you are vast. Some will stand at your shore and marvel. Others will test your depth, then walk away when they do not understand your tides. Let them. Do not become shallow to accommodate those afraid of waves. This journey, from the mirror of silence to the currency of attention, is not about them. It is about you. About how you return to yourself each time the world pulls you away. Do not ask, "What is he thinking?" Ask, "What am I remembering about myself in this moment?" For there lies your liberation. And as the ancient Zen saying goes, when you let go of what you are, you become what you might be. Breathe. Walk slowly. Let silence walk beside you, not ahead of you. And know that within it, there is no emptiness, only space for something deeper to emerge. When the silence of another begins to echo within you, it is not their absence that causes the deepest ache. It is your reaction to that silence that stirs the soul. Often, in the face of being ignored, the heart cries out for understanding, and the mind begins its restless work, weaving stories, conjuring reasons, assigning meaning to that which remains unspoken. This is the moment where self-awareness must awaken, where the true work begins, not in deciphering his silence, but in observing your own response to it. There is a quiet truth that rests beneath all emotional pain. Your reaction reveals more than their silence ever could. Just as a still pond reflects the sky above, your inner world reflects the stories you believe about yourself, especially in moments of neglect. Parable is told of a monk who lived in the high mountains. One day, he was visited by a traveler who had heard of the monk's wisdom and sought his counsel. The traveler lamented, "I wrote letters to a loved one for many months and received no reply. I feel abandoned. I must be unworthy." The monk listened, handed the man a delicate cup made of fine clay. "Hold this," he said. "Do not grip it too tightly." As the traveler held the cup, the monk whispered, "Now imagine the cup begins to disappear. Is it the cup that causes pain or your grip on it?" The traveler closed his eyes and understood it was not the silence that hurt him, the meaning he had clung to. So it is with us. When someone turns away, it is not always their act that wounds us, but the stories we tell ourselves in their absence. "I was not enough. I did something wrong. I must fix this." But such stories are not truths. They are echoes of old fears, fragments of earlier wounds, illusions formed in the darkness of uncertainty. True growth comes when we learn to pause, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing and still not grasp. The mind will seek answers. The heart will seek connection. But the soul seeks presence. In nature, we see this wisdom reflected again and again. The lotus does not panic when the sun disappears behind clouds. It does not shrink back into the mud. It remains open, steady in its unfolding, no matter the light. Likewise, your worth is not dictated by another's awareness of it. You are not made smaller because someone chooses not to see your depth in everyday life. This truth is lived quietly. A woman waits for a call that never comes. At first, her thoughts raced. Did I speak too freely? Was I too intense? Too soft? But then, one evening, she walks beneath a canopy of stars. She stops. She breathes. She feels the vastness above her, and something within her begins to echo that same spaciousness. In that stillness, she no longer needs the call. She remembers herself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Chor, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do. This is not apathy. It is not coldness. It is clarity. To observe your own reaction is to step out of the cycle of emotional dependency. When someone ignores you, they may be caught in their own storm. You cannot stop their rain, but you can choose whether or not to walk outside without shelter. And when you choose stillness, not indifference, but awareness, you begin to master not just the moment, but yourself. Let us now step even deeper. Often, the one who ignores is not cruel nor strategic, but lost in a labyrinth of his own making. Behind his silence, there may not be judgment or punishment, but fear, confusion, or the weight of unhealed wounds. Just as a wounded animal hides in the brush, so too does a wounded heart hide in silence. He may be wrestling with shadows he cannot yet name, ghosts of expectations, buried grief, or inherited beliefs about what it means to feel, to love, to connect. And in that wrestling, he withdraws not to harm you, but to protect himself from truths he does not know how to face. A story is told of a Shaolin warrior who trained diligently every day, yet avoided the temple's meditation hall. When asked why, he confessed, "In stillness, my thoughts rise like smoke. I fear what I see when I close my eyes." His master replied gently, "What you fear is not your thoughts, but your power to face them." So it is with many who fall silent. Their withdrawal is not an absence of care, but an inability to carry it. Their silence is not a judgment of you, but a mirror of what they have yet to understand within themselves. In the human experience, there are many such moments. A man grows distant after intimacy, not because he does not feel, Because the depth awakens a vulnerability he was never taught to hold. Another becomes cold when things become serious. Not because he is indifferent, but because commitment stirs old patterns of abandonment or inadequacy. These moments are not yours to solve. Compassion does not mean caretaking. To love someone is not to heal them in your arms, but to remain anchored in your own being, whether they rise beside you or walk alone. In the forest, trees grow together but do not entangle their roots. Each draws water from its own soil, reaching for the sky while grounded in its center. When storms come, the strength of the tree is not in the shelter of another, but in the depth of its roots. And so, when a man ignores you, consider this: he may be in the midst of his own internal storm. He may be unsure of his direction, overwhelmed by emotions he has no language for. His silence may not be a door closing, but a wall rising, not against you, but against himself. Loto reminds us, he who conquers others is strong, he who conquers himself is mighty. Let this guide your response. You cannot conquer his silence, but you can conquer your need for it to end. You can stand in stillness, not as a punishment to him, but as a devotion to yourself. When you meet his absence with your own presence, you shift the entire energy of the moment. You become a mirror not of fear, but of calm. A mirror not of need, but of clarity. In time he may return, or he may not. But by then, you will have returned to yourself. And that, above all, is the true home. This path is not an easy one. It requires courage to sit with the unknown. It asks you to breathe in the dark and walk without reaching. But it is on this path that your spirit becomes vast. And so we continue step by step, breath by breath, not toward understanding his silence, toward mastering our response to it, toward remembering that we are not defined by who sees us, by how we see ourselves when no one is watching. The journey is inward. The destination is peace. There is a sacred power in stillness. Not the stillness of resignation, but the stillness of presence. It is the kind of stillness a mountain holds when the wind forgets its name, the kind a candle carries when the flame stands upright in the breathless calm of dawn. In the moments when a man ignores you, when he withdraws into silence and you are left in the quiet space between words, it is not noise that saves you. It is not effort or explanation. It is stillness. That quiet return to the ground of your own being. Stillness is your greatest strength, not because it changes him, because it protects you. When you remain calm in the storm of someone else's confusion, you become immovable. The world may tug, people may vanish, affections may flicker, but your peace remains. There is a parable from the East of a young disciple who came to the master troubled and restless. Why does my heart tremble when I am not seen? Why do I ache when I am left waiting? The master pointed to a stone in the garden. Strike it, he said. The student did so, and the stone made no sound, did not move. Now strike the wind, the master said. The student waved his hand through the air. Nothing. Do you see? Said the master. The stone feels nothing. The wind, even less. Become like the stone, not hard, but unmoved. Or become the wind, not indifferent, but free. Stillness is not numbness. It is not emotional detachment. It is not pretending to be unaffected. It is the choice to breathe instead of react, to listen instead of grasp, to watch the mind's story without following it. It is the space between thought and action where wisdom lives. In the natural world, stillness holds tremendous force. The bamboo, tall and hollow, bends without breaking. It does not resist the wind. It flows with it. Its roots, however, are firm, unseen, and deep. This is the paradox of strength: softness on the surface, rootedness below. In your daily life, when someone you care for goes silent, your instinct may be to reach, to explain, to plead, to make sense of what feels senseless. but pause. Instead of reacting, sit, breathe, observe the longing rise, and let it pass like mist lifting from a morning lake. A woman once shared her practice during such moments. When ignored or left in uncertainty, she lights a single incense stick. She places it in the center of the room and sits in stillness until the last curl of smoke vanishes. No phone, no questions, no movement, just breath, just presence. By the time the smoke fades, she has remembered something far more valuable than a message received. She has remembered herself. The philosopher Zhuangzi wrote, "Flow with whatever may happen, and let your mind be free. Stay centered by accepting whatever you are doing." This is the ultimate. Stillness, then, is not passive. It is a discipline. It is the fierce commitment to inner alignment, even as the world stirs around you. When you practice this stillness, you no longer measure your value by another's attention. You no longer need confirmation to feel whole. And something beautiful happens when you become still. Your intuition awakens. You begin to sense what is real and what is your mind's creation. You stop chasing echoes. Start listening to the voice that never left you. The quiet voice beneath the noise. Let us now move to the final and most liberating truth. There is a strange magic in letting go. Not the kind of letting go that comes from defeat, but the kind that rises from deep wisdom. When you no longer hold on to the need for someone to notice, to return, to validate, you become radiant in a way that cannot be ignored. Letting go is not losing. It is releasing. Releasing the grip of expectations. Releasing the illusion of control. Releasing the idea that you must perform to be worthy. It is in letting go that your presence expands. There is an old Zen story of a woman who came to a master carrying a tightly wrapped bundle. "This is my sorrow," she said. "I carry it always." The master invited her to the edge of a river. "Throw it in," he said. She hesitated. "But it is mine." The master smiled, then carried across the river. She stepped into the water, bundle held high. But with each step, the weight grew heavier, her arms weaker. Finally, she let go and felt her feet again. She looked down and said, "I didn't know how heavy it was until it was gone." To let go of needing to be seen is not to become invisible. It is to shine without seeking permission. When a man ignores you, it may not be about you at all, but the mind wants to personalize. It wants to make sense, so it says, "He doesn't respond because I am not enough. He pulls away because I did something wrong." But often, silence speaks more about his inner landscape than your worth. He may be lost in his own forest, unable to see even himself clearly. In nature, rivers do not chase the mountains. The moon does not beg the night to admire its glow. Each exists in fullness. Each lets go of the need to be recognized. And in that surrender, they become eternal, a real moment from life. A person walks away from a relationship where they were constantly reaching. Not because they stopped caring, because they remembered they could no longer afford to abandon themselves. They began to paint again, to walk without checking their phone, to laugh without explanation. And months later, the one who once ignored them returned, only to find a light that no longer waited in shadows. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." How much of your life has been spent waiting to be noticed, waiting to be chosen? The practice now is to choose yourself, not in rebellion, but in reverence. When you let go of chasing, you become the one who is sought. When you release the need to be validated, your presence becomes pure. No longer filtered through the need for approval, your energy becomes magnetic in its calm. Letting go is a return to the self that existed before the ache, before the silence, before the needing. It is the soft yet powerful art of remembering I am not here to be found. I am here to be. As the journey draws near its end, you may find yourself quieter, not because you are empty, but because you are full, still and free. This is the path, not outward, but inward, not reaction, but reflection, not noise, but awareness. And so, when a man ignores you, may you hear the call not to chase him, but to return slowly, gently, wholly to yourself. For it is there, in that vast and steady space, that you will remember nothing real is ever lost. And what is truly yours will find you, not because you held on, but because you let go. When a man ignores you, let that be the moment you stop looking outward for meaning. Let his silence become your teacher, not your tormentor. Because what he is thinking may never be clear, but what you choose to think in that silence, that will shape your spirit. Be like the mountain. When the storm refuses to come, unmoved, alive, and sacred in your stillness. And if you truly listen, beneath the noise of your thoughts, beneath the ache of being unseen, you may hear the quiet whisper of truth. You were never waiting for him to return. You were always waiting to return to yourself. This is not just a video to hear. It is an experience to feel again and again. Revisit it whenever your soul forgets its strength. Let silence become your sanctuary and your answer.